Welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Kate Bruner. I am an early literacy librarian for the Colorado State Library's Growing Readers Together project. And today this is one of our QuickBites professional development sessions where we just take a quick 20-minute look at a topic that pertains to early literacy library staff and services. If anyone would like to share where they're logging in from today, please feel free to use the main chat to do that. Let us know what library you're from, what you do there. You're welcome to do that. And we are going to just sort of dive into this exploration of reflective practice for early literacy staff. And if you have any questions as that presentation goes on, please also feel free to use the main chat for those as well, and we'll try to catch those. And if you have any technical challenges while you're in the session today, feel free to message the Colorado State Library account that you can see. Christine is here and offering tech support for anyone who needs it. So just a little bit about Growing Readers Together, in case you aren't familiar with our project. We are a grant-funded project as part of the Colorado State Library and have been growing readers since 2016. And we work with Colorado libraries specifically to connect with their family, friend, and neighbor caregivers. In some states, this is called kith and kin care. Basically, anyone who is caring for young children that are not their own, who are not necessarily professional licensed caregivers. And so we work with the communities to help caregivers be more aware of the library resources and services that are available to them and help libraries connect with that population in order to provide quality early learning experiences for the children in their care in those communities. So today we're going to talk a little bit about reflective practice and what that is. It is something that is being used in a lot of different fields, including in nursing in particular, social work. Those are places, education, those are places where this is also becoming common practice. We're talking a little bit about the benefits of engaging in reflective practice, and then some ideas around getting started, including a really simple model you can use just to jumpstart your reflective practice for yourself. We'll also talk a little bit about how to do it as a group if you want to engage in it with a group, and how to make a plan to make this a regular part of your workflow. So first off, reflective practice. What does that mean? So I actually want to ask you all, and you can use the chat, like what do you think of when you hear that phrase? Like when you heard reflective practice, like what do you think that means? Or if you have experience with it, what does it mean to you? And I see some folks are typing, so I'm just going to give them a minute. Yeah, these are some great keywords coming through. Evaluating and assessing, intentionality, yes. Yep, well, thinking about what went well, what could be made better, absolutely. Yep. So there is sort of a definition. There are a lot of people who are studying this and then also think about it from an application and practice place. And so you will get different answers depending on which sources you look at. But generally speaking, this idea of reflective practice came from a group of scholars who were looking at the importance of the ability to reflect on your actions and then how that actually contributes to learning and how that creates more depth of learning for self when you're able to engage in that reflection. There's learning by doing, but then there is also a depth that you can reach if you also add on to that reflecting on what you did and using reflective practice to do that. So you may find a lot of different definitions around particulars and different language used to describe reflective practice, but they all kind of have some things in common. And these are the three that jump out at me looking at different authors' writings on reflective practice. Reflective practice is something that is a conscious practice. It's something you have to set time aside for to really pause and ask meaningful questions and sort of consciously think about experiences and events. And then it's also a holistic practice, because we're talking about what may have happened, actions that took place. We're also talking about how we think about those things that happened, how we think about the types of things we're doing in our work, and also how we feel about them as well, and maybe what underlying knowledge or beliefs are part of that. So you're kind of looking at all of those different aspects when you engage in reflective practice. So it's a very holistic practice. And then the other piece of it is that it is continuous. Once you begin engaging reflective practice, it's sort of an ongoing cyclical process that just keeps you learning. It really engages that continuous lifelong learning kind of thing that we're usually trying to pass on to the children that we work with, the youth that we work with, the families and caregivers. So, so it's really a way to sort of embody that and model it for others as well. But it is a continuous thing. It's not like you do one round of reflective practice and then, you know, then you're done. Like there's no more to learn, right? So I think you'll see, like in most of the models, and we're going to talk about one model in particular, like that these three elements are almost always there when we're talking about how we can engage reflective practice. So there are a lot of benefits to taking the time to do this because we do all have very full plates, but carving out time to do this has a lot of benefits for our libraries, our communities, and ourselves, actually. It really supports our learning very much, and it allows us to learn sort of in a holistic, more whole person kind of way. It allows us to really think about, you know, are we bringing our best strengths to the services and programs that we're providing? Are there other places in which both we and our communities would benefit from our own continued growth and learning? Like, it just makes us more aware about how we are engaging our communities and the services and programs that we're providing. And it really just helps us expand on our critical thinking and creativity, really, because taking the time to reflect actually allows you to have that opportunity to sort of kindle new creative ways of engaging things. And when you engage in reflective practice in a group setting, it also increases the communication within the group, and it increases your ability to collaborate successfully. So one of the best benefits of reflective practice for me has been that it really helps move my learning from theory to very deliberate action, like to taking ideas and concepts that I may have learned about in a conference or may have learned about taking a class or may have learned about from one of my peers or a mentor, and then really applying those. Like, reflecting allows me to take the time to think about what theory is underlying the things that I'm doing, what theory might I want to be underlying the things I'm doing, and then how do I actually put that into practice, put that into application with the actions I'm taking. So the word reflection sort of has this sort of passive undertone, you know, the kind of the navel gazing, like, you know, sitting around waxing philosophical kind of thing. But it's actually really not as passive as we may sort of assume that it is, because by engaging in the practice of reflection, it really allows us, as Ruth Kyler says here, to active experimentation, creativity, and progression. It allows us to keep moving forward, to keep growing and keep learning. So there are some pretty simple ways that you can think about how to actually make this happen. What does it look like? How do I do it? Talking about the concept is fine, but how can I actually engage this? So when you are just adapting this for yourself as a self-reflective practice, it's helpful to keep a record of your reflections. And how you do this should play to what sorts of resources you already use for this sort of thing. So if you are the type of person who keeps a journal, then maybe having a reflective practice journal would be a good thing for you. If a Google Doc is great for you, or if jotting down like reflections on sticky notes, or however you choose to organize your reflections, if you keep a record of it, you're able to come back to it, and that is where you can really leverage that continuous process and that growth and reflection. There's also the opportunity to think about how you could invite feedback. So reflecting yourself internally, but also think about who you could not necessarily engage in like a full sit down, we're going to have a whole deep thing, like I don't have time for that sort of big exercise. But who could you go ask for feedback on this if you wanted additional perspectives? You can kind of think about who you could invite more feedback from. And then think about what you've learned recently. So that's an important piece of that as well, because it gives you an opportunity to really inventory your learning. Sometimes we don't even realize how much we're learning in the moment until we actually stop to pause and reflect on that. And then think about your strengths. Name them, actually. It just increases that self-confidence and increases your awareness of, hey, like, these are strengths I'm bringing to this program, I'm bringing to this service that we're providing. So, and it also gives you the opportunity to really think about what Somerville and Keeling call areas of opportunity. Like, where could you be bringing your strengths to play even more? And then one strategy that is often recommended as well is to remember that while you're also reflecting from your personal experience, think about stepping outside the experience. Think about if you were an observer of what took place, what might shift your perspective on the situation and what reflections you might gain from that. And then engaging empathy can be a part of that. Instead of being an outside observer, you can also think about how was this, like how do I think this was for the folks involved, like for the caregivers coming to my story time, what do I think that experience has been like for them? And then once you're doing that, an important piece of that also is to kind of pull back and look. And if you're using reflective practice on a regular basis, you can look for patterns and connections in that. Like what sorts of people are coming to your story times all the time and who's not there, right? Who am I not connecting with in the community? Who am I connecting well with in the community? So you can look for those patterns and connections if you're taking that time to kind of step back and reflect. Instead of just kind of logging your numbers and moving on to the next event. And then using all of that information, that gives us the opportunity to make very conscious, very deliberate decisions when we want to change something. Either shift how we're doing something or maybe retire one program and field a new program, or look at what services are thriving and how we can continue to expand on those. Whatever those decisions you might need to make around your early literacy programming and services, this gives you that opportunity to make them in a very conscious, deliberate, planned, responsive way as opposed to a reactive way. So this is a really, really simple reflective practice model, and I'm going to actually ask you all to just kind of engage in this super fast, right? And just to kind of get a feel for it. But just think about the last interaction you had with someone in your someone in your library. It could actually be a fellow staff member, a patron, a child, a caregiver, like whoever that might be. Just think about in your head, real quick, like, in one or two sentences, what happened? And then you can ask yourself, so what? What was important about that interaction? Again, just kind of try to think one or two sentences, super fast, like what first comes to mind? What was important about that interaction? So what? You had that interaction, so what? And then think about what's next. So you had that interaction, there was something meaningful about it. What can you carry forward from that? What did you learn from it? What is something you might do a little bit differently if you had that interaction again? And so just try to think, you can see how that's cyclical, right? Because whatever you answer to that what next question, you're going to carry that forward into the next interaction you have. And then there's the opportunity to reflect again. So this is like speed reflective practice right here. But you can actually, if you just hang on to those three little questions right there, and you carve out, like, say, 5 minutes after your next early literacy program, right, to just sit down and ask yourself, what just happened? So what? What was meaningful about what happened? What next? What could I carry forward? It can be that simple. So because we have very packed calendars, very full plates, right? But if you just take this super simple model, it's a way to just start. And then you can think about, as that becomes valuable or becomes habit, and you keep doing that, how could you expand on that? What other questions could you be asking yourself? How could you be keeping track of this? How could you build reflective practice into just your daily round? Yeah, these are great. Thank you for sharing in the chat. That's right. So it can just be this fast. Keep inviting them to be part of story time, right? So if you are wanting to use reflective practice as a group, you're using basically the same principles. But again, there may be a couple of other things to think about. So think about how the group could keep a record of your reflections. Again, using tools you already use instead of introducing another tool is probably a better way to go if you're trying to integrate reflective practice into a group, into your team, right? Instead of having to add new tech on top of, like, oh gosh, we got to do this one more thing, right? If you're using something you're already using, or you're but somehow keeping a group record of that so you can continue to come back to it. And then it's also a good idea to agree on some basic reflection process norms, because if you are going to be looking at things that aren't working as well as you want them to work, you do want people to feel safe in sharing that feedback and in talking about it and talking about what they could do better, and themselves, or what the group could do better as they're planning programs and services in your library. So do agree on some reflection process norms to begin with, because that just helps facilitate the process when you're working in a group. And then invite feedback from each other within that group, but also invite feedback from your community as well, and then share that. So if you've gotten feedback from a community member or someone else has in your group, and then sharing that into the group as part of the group reflection process brings the community into that process as well. And then thinking about inventorying everyone's learning. What you learned from a particular experience might not be what your coworker learned from that experience, or even what a participant learned from that experience. So kind of taking stock of what everyone was learning from that experience or event is always a good idea. And then again, you are still looking to value strengths and look for areas of opportunity. And again, stepping outside that experience. And that can be helped by soliciting feedback from the community or from participants as well. Same with engaging empathy as well, too. And then it's the same process of looking for patterns and connections. You're just doing it in a group setting now, and you have lots of different perspectives to help you pull out those patterns and connections. And then the same thing, making very deliberate decisions about what you want to change and shift from a place that that is like intentional, as someone mentioned. You used that word earlier, I think Jenny did. So, and you're using that process in a very intentional, deliberate way. And so if you want to start using reflective practice, that what you will get out of reflective practice really depends on what you put into it. So you do have to think about, how am I going to make a plan to do this, to engage this, and then build it into your very busy day already. So think about what supplies you might need from a very practical standpoint, right? Like I said, if you are a journal person, maybe you just want a journal. If you're a Google Doc person, maybe you want a Google Doc. If you're an apps person, maybe that'll help. If you're doing personal self-reflection, having particular music you like to listen to while you're doing it, even if it's like 2 songs. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to listen to these 2 songs while I do my reflection, and then I know time's up and I can move on, right? So any sort of supplies that might help you set aside this time and space to do this. And then time is also important. So like, put it on your to-do list, put it on your calendar, and try it out, and just believe that this is an important thing you'll benefit from for the time period that you try it out for. But make space for it. Write it down on your to-do list, whatever the case might be. And then pick a place to conduct your reflection in which you feel comfortable, and in which you won't be interrupted. I know, right? In the library, that can be challenging. But even if you can step outside aside and sit on a bench like for 5 minutes to do this with your notebook, then somewhere you feel you can engage in that. So think creatively about different places you could go to do this reflective practice. And then think about who else you might want to share this with. And you might not need to share all of your reflection. That might mostly be for yourself. But if you have a friend or a peer or a community member that you feel like you have a good relationship with that you could talk with and say, hey, I'm doing this thing and this is the thing I'm thinking about, like, and I just love to, share it with you. Like, and that can be very helpful. And then also if you have another coworker who might also be interested in reflective practice, you can kind of help each other be accountable. Like, hey, did you do your reflective practice after story time today? You can kind of share and support each other in that. So that's just a whirlwind tour of reflective practice and how it can be beneficial in the library environment and different ways that you can maybe jumpstart using it for yourself. So I also, just before we go today, wanted to let you all know that coming in 2022, we still have the Growing Readers Together Play, Learn, and Grow programs available for Colorado libraries who are interested in bringing that program to your library, and we're able to offer those in person or online right now. And so if you're interested in that, please do reach out to either me if you are Colorado Library on the Western Slope, or to Melody Garcia if you're on the Front Range or Eastern Plains. And if you're not sure which one of us to reach out to, just reach out because we'll figure it all out. So we are also always available to chat about continuing professional development or any work that you're interested in doing on your early learning spaces, programs, services. If you want to talk about outreach strategies, anything you can think of that you might be interested, especially if you're interested in connecting with those informal caregivers in your community. Just send us an email or give us a call, and we'd be happy to chat with you about that. Also in 2022, as we move forward, we're always evaluating how these QuickBites are working for folks, and if there are any particular topics that you're interested in. Specifically for us to put on the QuickBite calendar for 2022, please let us know. So if you'd be willing to complete this survey for today's presentation, we'd really appreciate it. And then you're also welcome to reach out to us at any time if you have ideas for future QuickBites, or if you'd be interested in perhaps co-hosting one with us and you have a QuickBite topic you would love to share with the library community. So thank you all so much for coming today, and I am going to stick around just for a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat and I will be happy to address those. You're welcome. Thank you all for coming.